Only when you understand this about yourself will you find true freedom. Carl Jung. You think you're free, right? You make your own choices, decide your path. But what if I told you that some of those choices weren't actually yours? Not the job you chase, not the people you crave, not even the fears you avoid. What if your life has quietly been guided by a version of you that you didn't choose, one shaped not by your truth, but by survival? This isn't philosophy. It's not mysticism. This is psychology. This is real. Most people don't need more freedom, they need more self-awareness. Because the only real prison is the one you live in unconsciously, the beliefs you never questioned, the patterns you never saw, the wounds you never healed. Carl Jung called it the shadow. Marcus Aurelius called it the inner citadel. They both knew the same truth. If you don't know what's moving you from the inside, then you're not living, you're just reacting. But here's the good news. The moment you see the mask is the moment you get to choose. That's what this video is about. Not fixing, not pretending, just noticing, honestly, compassionately, and maybe for the first time, remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. And if something in that strikes a chord, if you feel yourself breathing a little deeper already, then I'm glad you're here. We're building something rare, a space for real inner work, rooted in clarity, courage, and the kind of wisdom that doesn't flinch. If that resonates with you, here's a simple favor I'll ask. Hit that subscribe button. It helps us keep doing this work, quietly, steadily, and for real. Now let's begin. Because true freedom doesn't come from breaking rules. It comes from breaking illusions. From the moment we're born, we're taught how to behave, how to be good. Not good in the sense of virtue, but in the sense of acceptability. We quickly learn what earns us a smile, what makes people pull away, and what gets us praised or punished. And so, we adjust. We hide certain feelings. We push down questions we're not supposed to ask. We become experts at sensing what others want from us and giving it to them. You hid the parts that were too intense, too emotional, too different. You learned to laugh when you didn't find things funny. You said yes when everything inside you was begging for a no. You watered yourself down so you could fit in better. And over time, that compromise started to feel safe. The world didn't push back as much. People liked you. You got approval. But there's a cost to that kind of peace because comfort isn't peace. Not real peace. Real peace doesn't require you to shrink. Real peace doesn't feel like something you earned by abandoning yourself. What you felt instead was relief, a temporary silence bought by betrayal of the self. And the deeper problem is this. After wearing that mask long enough, you stopped noticing it was even there. You didn't just act like the version of you others approved of, you started to believe you were that version. Carl Jung said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." Because when you realize how much of yourself you've silenced, buried, or distorted, it shakes you. But there's also something freeing in it because something in you remembers that small ache in your chest when you're alone, that quiet discomfort when everything seems fine. That's your real self trying to come back to life. It never died, it just got quiet. The soul doesn't vanish. It waits, sometimes for years, sometimes for decades. And then one day, something cracks, and you can't unsee what you've seen. Socrates said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." But what happens when the life you're living isn't really yours? What if it's a performance, built on fear, shaped by expectation, and sustained by silence? Who are you performing for? And what? When you trace it back, it's often not even your voice you're obeying. It's the voice of a parent you wanted to please. A teacher you feared disappointing. A culture that told you what strength should look like. And those voices, though long gone, still echo. They still pull the strings unless you become aware of them. And here's the thing. Awareness isn't always pleasant. In fact, it's often uncomfortable. It disrupts the routine. It confronts you with truths you'd rather ignore. But as Plato wrote, the price good men pay for indifference to public affairs is to be ruled by evil men. And the same goes for your inner world. The price you pay for ignoring your truth is to be ruled by your wounds. At first, it feels like breaking apart, like everything you knew about yourself is up for question. But that's not destruction. That's liberation. Because once you see the mask, you get to choose. You get to ask, do I still want to wear this? There's no quick fix, no shortcut. But there is something more valuable. An invitation to meet yourself honestly, to listen to the parts of you you've silenced, to hold your contradictions instead of judging them. As Aristotle said, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. And self-knowledge isn't clean or easy. It's messy, raw, and deeply human. But once you begin that process, something shifts. You stop chasing approval. You stop begging the world to validate a version of you that isn't even real. You begin to settle into something quieter but infinitely stronger. A kind of freedom that can't be taken away because it doesn't depend on anyone else's permission. And that's where peace starts. Not in perfection, but in truth, in wholeness, in no longer needing to perform. Carl Jung didn't call it self-sabotage. He called it the shadow. The part of you that holds everything you've pushed away, not because it was evil, but because somewhere along the way, someone made you believe it was unacceptable. That part of you that feels jealous when someone else shines. The part that gets angry when you're overlooked. The part that craves recognition but is too ashamed to admit it. It all lives there, quietly waiting. And as long as you keep pretending those feelings don't exist, they grow stronger. You might think you're making rational choices, that you're just unlucky in relationships, or that stress makes you snap. But what if that wasn't true? What if those blow-ups, that stuckness, those moments you regret weren't random at all? What if something within you was playing out the same old story over and over because you never stopped to listen to it? That's your shadow. It's not some abstract idea. It's the buried part of you still looking for expression. Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. That one sentence explains more pain than most people realize. Because we walk through life thinking we're in control, but in reality, most of us are acting out emotional blueprints we never consciously agreed to. You find yourself drawn to the same kind of people, the ones who don't see you, the ones who take more than they give. Or maybe you keep playing the savior, trying to fix everyone, hoping they'll finally stay. These aren't just bad choices. These are shadows in motion. They're the patterns we attract when a part of us is still trying to solve something that was never healed. And when it happens, we say things like, why do I always do this? Or, what's wrong with me? But those aren't the right questions. The better question is, what am I not willing to feel? Because whatever you're not willing to feel is usually what controls you. The shadow isn't just made of rage, or grief, or shame. It's also your hunger for love, your buried creativity, your silenced voice, your unapologetic truth. You may have locked it away to survive, but now you're still living as if the war is going on. And that's the real tragedy, when the danger is gone, but the armor stays on. Aristotle said, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom, but knowing yourself isn't just about the polished parts. It's about turning toward what you've rejected and saying, I see you. You belong here too. That's not weakness. That's wholeness. The longer you avoid it, the more the shadow distorts your relationships, your goals, your sense of self. You'll blame other people. You'll call it timing. You'll label it as just being how life is. But underneath it all, the truth doesn't stop whispering. And here's the shift. The shadow doesn't want to ruin you. It wants to be integrated. It wants to be acknowledged, not denied. Because inside those uncomfortable emotions is the raw energy that, if claimed, can become confidence, clarity, and power. You don't fight the shadow. You meet it. You sit with the discomfort instead of numbing it. You track the patterns instead of just reacting. You get curious instead of judgmental. Plato once wrote, "The first and greatest victory is to conquer yourself." And he wasn't talking about dominating your feelings. He was talking about understanding them. That's when you start to reclaim your choices. Not because you've become perfect or emotionless, but because you're finally awake. You recognize when your shadow is being triggered. You catch it before it takes over. And slowly, you begin to steer your own life. Not by force, but by awareness. True freedom doesn't come from avoiding what's hidden. It comes from turning toward it and saying, "I'm ready now." Because when you bring light to the parts you once feared, you stop being driven by them. And that's when you finally take the wheel back. You say you want peace, but peace doesn't grow where truth is buried. You can repeat affirmations, meditate, surround yourself with soft lighting and calm music, but none of it lasts if you're still hiding from yourself. Denial isn't healing, it's just delay. And the more you delay, the more pressure builds behind the mask you've learned to wear so well. You say you want love, but how can anyone truly love you when you don't show them who you really are? You give people the curated version, the agreeable one, the one who never makes things messy or complicated. And while that may earn you acceptance, it's a hollow kind. Because deep down, you know it's not you they're choosing, it's your performance. You want clarity. You want to feel aligned. But every time discomfort shows up, you look away. You distract yourself. You scroll. You overthink. You escape into plans and to-do lists, telling yourself that productivity will somehow fix the ache. But clarity only comes when you sit with the mess. When you actually feel the thing you've been trying to outrun. You say you want growth, but growth is born from tension, from breakdowns, from staring your patterns in the face and saying, "I'm not doing this anymore." And most people avoid that moment at all costs. Not because they're weak, but because it's hard. Carl Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls." You can feel the truth of that in how quickly we reach for distraction when we're finally alone. This is the quiet war inside, between who you really are and who you've had to become to be accepted. That version of you who learned to keep things smooth, to suppress the inconvenient emotions, to act strong even when you're falling apart. That version didn't come from nowhere. It came from survival. But survival mode isn't meant to be permanent. The longer you live in it, the more disconnected you become. That disconnection doesn't always look dramatic. It often looks like anxiety that won't go away, no matter how much you try to calm down. It looks like burnout from doing all the right things and still feeling empty. It looks like numbness that creeps in even when your life looks good on paper. These aren't flaws. They're signals, as if your body, your mind, your very spirit is waving a flag and saying, "You've drifted too far from yourself." Plato said, "The worst form of injustice is pretended justice." And something similar happens internally when you pretend you're okay, when you pretend you're aligned, when you pretend you're whole. Your inner world suffers an injustice because it knows better. It knows what's been avoided. It knows what still needs to be heard. The ego isn't the villain here, it's just afraid. Afraid that if you show too much, you'll be rejected. That if you let go of control, you'll fall apart. So it clings. It edits. It polishes. It presents a version of life that feels more manageable. But that version also traps you because it's not built on truth. It's built on fear. And the price of that illusion is high. You trade your depth for approval. You trade authenticity for certainty. You trade freedom for safety. But what if you didn't have to? What if peace wasn't about controlling everything, but allowing everything to be seen? Socrates said, "To know thyself is the beginning of wisdom." And maybe that's where it all starts, not with fixing, not with performing, but with noticing, with being honest, with admitting what hurts, what scares you, what still needs healing. Because once you tell the truth to yourself, the war begins to end. And in that ending, something softer begins. Something more grounded. Not the kind of peace that's silent because it's suppressed, but the kind that's quiet because it's real. Because finally, there's no one left to pretend to be. The world taught you how to behave, how to blend in, how to speak when spoken to, smile when you're hurting, and never ask for too much. It taught you that being good meant being easy to manage. That love is something you earn by staying agreeable. But Carl Jung didn't tell you to be good. He told you to be whole. And there's a big difference. To be whole means to welcome all of who you are. Not just the polished parts that get praise, but the rough edges too. The pride that shows up when you succeed. The pain that lingers when you're alone. The strength you rarely acknowledge. The shame you try to bury. All of it is you. And when you cut pieces of yourself out just to be accepted, you don't become more lovable. You become less. Fragmentation doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes, it just feels like a low hum of emptiness. Like you're living slightly outside your own life, going through the motions, nodding at the right times, saying what's expected, yet feeling like a stranger behind your own eyes. That's not peace. That's imprisonment. Plato once said, "The worst of all deceptions is self-deception." And he was right. The moment you start lying to yourself about what you want, what you need, who you are, you break that inner connection. And over time, that disconnection starts to hurt. It shows up as exhaustion you can't explain, as resentment that keeps building, as joy that feels just out of reach, no matter how much you accomplish. The first step toward freedom isn't a massive leap. It's a decision. A quiet, honest moment where you say, "I'm done pretending." You stop performing for applause that doesn't satisfy you. You stop contorting yourself to meet expectations that drain you. You stop chasing the comfort of being liked and start reaching for the deeper satisfaction of being real. Yes, it will cost you. Some people won't know how to handle your truth. Some will back away when you stop filtering your feelings, when you stop saying what they want to hear. But those people were never truly seeing you in the first place. And the ones who stay, they'll be choosing you, not the polished version, not the edited mask, but you. There's something sacred about being seen in your fullness. Aristotle said, "Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom." But knowing yourself isn't just a thought experiment. It's a lived experience. And it means facing the uncomfortable things too. The parts of yourself you were told to hide, the emotions you've been suppressing for years. It means holding all of that in your hands and saying, "This is part of me, and I'm not ashamed." You don't become whole by denying your darkness. You become whole by integrating it, by making space for it, by learning from it. Because inside that darkness is often the very thing you've been searching for, your voice, your power, your depth. Jung called this the path of individuation, a process of becoming who you really are, not who the world told you to be. That path isn't easy, but it's real. And once you begin walking it, the need to pretend fades. The need to control every perception loosens. You stop living from fear and start moving from truth. And that quietly and steadily becomes the foundation for a life that's not just successful but authentic. In the end, you realize you were never too much. You were just never fully seen. And now, you finally have the courage to be seen as you are, whole. The shadow isn't there to destroy you. It's there to complete you. Most people hear the word shadow and immediately think of something dangerous, something to be avoided or eliminated. We associate it with weakness, shame, guilt, or behavior we're not proud of. But the shadow, as Carl Jung described it, is not your enemy. It's the part of you that was cast aside when you learned how to survive. It's your rejected thoughts, your hidden impulses, your unspoken emotions. It's everything you were taught not to be, but still are. It holds your jealousy, but also your hidden ambition, your anger, but also your deep sense of justice. Your fear, but also your intuition. Your sensitivity, but also your creativity. You see, what we bury doesn't disappear. It waits. And while it waits, it grows stronger in the dark. When you look away from your shadow, it doesn't go dormant. It acts out quietly, unconsciously. It becomes the voice in your head that whispers self-doubt. It becomes the pattern that keeps you stuck in the same arguments, the same heartbreaks, the same fears. It shapes your choices while convincing you they're rational. It makes you mistake your coping mechanisms for personality traits. And the more you ignore it, the more chaos it creates. But when you stop running from it, when you turn toward it honestly, without flinching, everything changes. You start to see the raw material your shadow carries. What once showed up as explosions of anger now shows up as clarity, directness, boundaries. What once felt like envy turns into drive, a desire to create your own version of what you admire. What used to feel like fear begins to sharpen into alertness, into instinct. That's the power of bringing the unconscious into the light. Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. And fate, when you're unaware of your inner world, becomes a loop. You start to think, why does this keep happening to me? But what's really happening is that your shadow is living through you, acting through your blind spots, repeating what was never healed. And that's where individuation begins. Jung didn't see healing as becoming perfect, he saw it as becoming real. He said, I'd rather be whole than good. And that's the essence of this journey, not to be some flawless version of yourself, but to be fully and fearlessly you. Most people spend their lives trying to feel free. They chase peace, love, happiness, fulfillment. But they do it through denial, through performance, through constantly editing themselves to stay liked, to stay safe, to stay inside the invisible lines society draws around acceptable. But that kind of safety is a cage. You get good at pretending. You master the performance. But behind closed doors, you feel numb. You feel disconnected. You wonder why nothing ever feels real. The truth is, freedom isn't something you find. It's something you remember. Because you were born whole. Before anyone told you who to be, what to hide, or what to be ashamed of. You were already free, fully expressed, curious, bold, sensitive, intuitive. But then, little by little, you were told that part of you was too much, this part not enough, that emotion inconvenient. So you split. You buried parts of yourself just to belong. And at the time, it was survival. It made sense. But now, you're carrying a fragmented self and wondering why you feel like something's always missing. Plato once said, the soul takes nothing with her to the next world but her education and her upbringing. What you absorb, especially when you're young, becomes your internal blueprint. It becomes the foundation of your shadow. And until you confront it, until you examine it, it becomes the silent architect of your life. This is why emotional patterns repeat even when your circumstances change. You can leave the toxic relationship, find a better job, move to a new city. But if your shadow isn't integrated, the same core wounds find new ways to show up. They dress in different clothes, speak in different voices, but the story is always the same. So what does integration look like? It's not some grand event. It's subtle. It's the moment you catch yourself spiraling in self-doubt and instead of collapsing, you get curious. You ask, whose voice is that really? It's the moment you feel triggered and instead of lashing out, you pause and ask what that anger is trying to protect. It's when you finally stop apologizing for having needs, for feeling deeply, for being human. Integration is when you become the observer of your shadow, not its puppet. It doesn't mean you won't feel fear, or envy, or insecurity anymore. It means those feelings no longer get to control your decisions. They don't hijack your relationships. They don't keep you stuck. You recognize them for what they are: old signals, echoes, leftovers from a story that no longer serves you. And with that awareness, you take your power back. Socrates said, "The secret of change is to focus all of your energy, not on fighting the old, but on building the new." But building the new begins with understanding the old, not avoiding it, not skipping over it with a list of goals and daily affirmations. You can't heal what you're still afraid to look at. You can't grow into your future if you're still being run by your past. Integration doesn't make you perfect. It makes you honest. And honesty, especially with yourself, is the foundation of real peace. When you stop lying about who you are, when you stop hiding parts of yourself just to be accepted, you finally feel what it's like to exhale. You move through the world with less tension because you're no longer performing. You speak with less hesitation because your words are rooted in truth. You love with less fear because you're no longer terrified of being fully seen. That's real freedom, the kind that can't be taken from you because it was never dependent on anyone else. It wasn't something you had to chase. It was always inside you, buried beneath the roles, the expectations, the fear, waiting to be remembered. Aristotle said, "Happiness depends upon ourselves, but not the version of ourselves we pretend to be. The real one, the one we've been running from, the one that holds both the light and the dark, the strength and the softness, the logic and the longing." And once you meet that version, the search ends, not because life becomes easy, but because you no longer feel lost in it. You know who you are. And even when you forget, you now have a map back to yourself. That map is the shadow, not a curse, not a flaw, a compass, a reminder, a necessary mirror. Freedom isn't the absence of struggle. It's the presence of wholeness. And now that you understand what's been calling from within you all along, now that you've seen the truth, you can't unknow it. You're not broken. You're just divided. And now you're coming home. You were never missing pieces. You were just waiting to remember all of who you are. If something in this spoke to you, don't stop here. There's another video waiting for you right on the screen that continues this journey inward. Thank you for being a part of Stoic Journal. Come back when you're ready to go deeper. We'll be here. There's something profound about facing the parts of yourself you've long ignored. You might have spent years trying to outrun them, thinking that your issues, your fears, your insecurities were simply obstacles that needed to be overcome. But the truth is, these aren't obstacles to overcome, they're invitations. Invitations to get to know yourself. Invitations to grow. We often live life trying to outrun discomfort, to keep things smooth, to avoid conflict. But every time we do, we're ignoring the parts of us that are trying to speak. These parts are like whispers from your deeper self, urging you to acknowledge them, to heal them, to integrate them. But it's not easy. It's not supposed to be. There's a reason why so many of us avoid this journey. The unknown is terrifying. The truth often stings. But what you'll find when you stop running is freedom. True freedom. You see, most people spend their entire lives reacting. They're constantly chasing after approval or running from criticism. They're caught in the whirlwind of external validation. And while it might feel good in the short term, that validation can never fill the void inside. You may look good on the outside, successful, liked, admired, but on the inside, there's something missing. That something is you. When you start looking inward, when you begin to question the foundations of your life, the beliefs, the patterns, the things you've taken for granted, you'll start to feel like you're finally coming home. You'll feel like you're getting in touch with the real you, the version of yourself that was always there, buried under layers of expectations and fears. You might think that freedom comes from breaking away, from escaping the roles you've been forced into. But true freedom doesn't come from breaking away. It comes from breaking through. breaking through the walls you've built around yourself to protect that fragile sense of self. The walls of ego, of performance, of seeking validation. The truth is, we all have a shadow. That hidden part of us that's pushed down, rejected, and cast aside. And the longer we ignore it, the stronger it grows. It acts out unconsciously, dictating our decisions, our relationships, and our behaviors. But when we finally turn toward it and say, "I see you," that's when the real work begins. Because the shadow doesn't want to control you. It wants to be seen. It wants to be understood. As Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. That's the essence of individuation, the process of becoming who you really are. Not the version of yourself you've been trying to perfect, but the version of yourself that has always been underneath the surface, waiting to be acknowledged. So, the question becomes, are you willing to face your shadow? Are you willing to look at the parts of you that you've been avoiding for so long? Because only then can you start to see the truth about who you are, what you want, and what's truly important to you. And when you start this journey, it will be uncomfortable. There will be moments where you'll feel like everything you thought you knew about yourself is being shattered. But don't mistake this discomfort for destruction. It's the beginning of something new. It's the foundation of true peace. Real peace doesn't come from hiding from your struggles. It comes from embracing them. It comes from accepting that you are both light and dark, strong and weak, human and divine. It comes from allowing all the parts of yourself to exist without judgment, without shame. In the process of embracing your shadow, you'll begin to integrate the parts of you that were once hidden. The feelings, the desires, the anger, the joy, the creativity, you'll start to see them not as obstacles but as vital parts of who you are. And when you do, something incredible happens. You stop seeking approval from others. You stop chasing validation. You stop pretending to be something you're not. And that's where the true power lies. You become authentic. You become whole. But this doesn't happen overnight. It's a gradual process. It's like peeling back layers of an onion. Each layer brings you closer to the core, closer to the essence of who you are. And sometimes, those layers are painful to peel back. But once you do, you'll find that what you've been seeking was never outside of you. It was always inside. Now, I want you to take a moment and ask yourself, what are you still hiding from? What parts of you have you been pretending don't exist? What emotions, what desires, what truths have you been avoiding? The answers may not come right away. And that's okay. But the key is to begin the process. To stop avoiding. To stop pretending. To stop running from your own truth. Because the moment you do, you'll begin to unlock the freedom that's been waiting for you all along. True freedom is not the absence of pain, of struggle, of discomfort. It's the presence of honesty. It's the presence of self-awareness. And when you finally embrace that truth, when you stop pretending to be someone you're not, that's when you'll experience peace. That's when you'll finally be free. So, if you've been avoiding your shadow, if you've been running from the parts of yourself that scare you, I invite you to stop. I invite you to turn toward them. Not with judgment, but with curiosity. Not with fear, but with compassion. Because once you do, you'll start to see that the real you was always there, waiting to be seen, waiting to be loved. And that's when you can finally begin living. Not as the person the world expects you to be, but as the person you were always meant to be. And I promise you, that's when life becomes truly magical. As you move forward in this journey, you might begin to notice small shifts in the way you respond to the world, in the way you feel about yourself. These shifts will feel subtle at first, like gentle whispers, but over time, they'll grow louder, clearer, more powerful. And one day, you'll look back and realize that you've come further than you ever expected. You'll see that this journey of self-awareness, of turning toward your shadow, wasn't just about confronting your darkness, it was about rediscovering your light. It's easy to get lost in the noise of the world. The world tells you who to be, how to act, what success looks like, what love should feel like. And in the process, we forget who we are. We forget what we really want. We forget the essence of what makes us whole. But once you start peeling back the layers, once you begin facing your shadow and embracing all parts of yourself, you start to reconnect with your true self. And that connection is where real strength lies. Strength doesn't come from being perfect or flawless. It comes from being real. From showing up as you are, without the masks, without the pretenses. From allowing yourself to be vulnerable, to feel, to make mistakes, and to learn. From acknowledging that you are both broken and whole, both strong and weak, and that's what makes you human. This journey isn't just about self-improvement. It's about self-acceptance. It's about letting go of the need to perform for others and finally accepting yourself as you are. It's about giving yourself permission to be messy, to be raw, to be human. And the more you embrace your true self, the more you'll realize that the things you've been searching for, peace, love, fulfillment, are already within you. You don't need to chase them. You don't need to prove yourself to anyone. Because the moment you stop pretending to be someone else, the moment you stop running from your truth, you'll experience a peace that goes deeper than any external validation ever could. The shadow isn't something to fear. It's not something that will destroy you if you face it. It's a part of you that's been waiting for your attention. It's the part of you that holds all the things you've tried to hide or suppress. And when you turn toward it with courage and curiosity, you'll see that it's not your enemy, it's your ally. It's the key to unlocking your full potential, your real power, your true freedom. As you continue this path of self-discovery, remember, there's no rush. There's no need to get everything right. There's no need to pretend that you've got it all figured out. The beauty of this journey lies in its imperfection. It's messy. It's challenging. It's sometimes painful. But it's also deeply rewarding. Because with each step you take, with each layer you peel back, you're coming closer to the truth of who you are. And once you realize that truth, once you truly understand that your power doesn't come from perfection, from approval, or from external success, it becomes impossible to go back. You can't unsee what you've seen. You can't ignore your truth any longer. And that's when you start living with intention, living from a place of authenticity, not because you have to, but because you want to. You'll find that you no longer need to chase approval or run from your fears. You'll stop apologizing for who you are. You'll stop shrinking yourself to fit into someone else's idea of what's acceptable. Instead, you'll stand tall, rooted in the knowledge that you are enough, just as you are. True freedom comes not from breaking free from the world, but from breaking free from the illusions we've built around ourselves. It's about waking up to the truth that you've always been whole, always been enough, always been worthy. You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to hide anything. You don't have to be anything other than yourself. And when you finally realize that, when you step into your authentic self, free from the masks and the expectations, you'll find a peace that no one can take away from you. It won't be a peace built on approval or comfort. It will be a peace built on truth. A peace that doesn't need to be earned. A peace that comes from simply being who you are, unapologetically, fully, and completely. So, as you continue down this path of self-awareness and integration, remember this: you don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be willing to show up, to be honest with yourself, and to embrace the journey, wherever it may lead. Because, in the end, true freedom isn't about escaping from the world. It's about fully embracing it. It's about becoming whole, becoming real, and reclaiming the life that's always been yours. And once you begin that process, you'll see that everything you've been searching for, the peace, the clarity, the love, has always been within you, just waiting to be remembered. So, if something in this message resonates with you, if you feel like you're ready to step into your true self, I invite you to keep going. Don't stop here. Continue the journey inward. Because the more you discover about yourself, the more you'll realize that the only thing standing in the way of your freedom was the illusion that you weren't already free. Thank you for being a part of this journey. And if this video has spoken to you, if you feel like you've uncovered something new about yourself, I invite you to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Together, we're building something rare, something real, and something powerful. A community that seeks truth, clarity, and freedom. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next video.